Welcome to the Productivity Show, a podcast where we believe that you can get the important things done without having to sacrifice your health, family, and things that matter to you. My name is Tan, and I'm the founder and CEO of Asian Efficiency, where we help people become more productive at work and in life. And today I'm joined by a co-host that is not named Brooks Duncan, but his name is, he left Wall Street with no plan and started a newsletter called RadReach, which has become an online education company that helps professionals lead productive, examined, and joyful lives. He's also the creator of 10K Work and teaches people a popular cohort-based productivity course called Supercharge Your Productivity. So I'm super excited to have him on today to talk about productivity and everything else leading fulfilling lives. So welcome to the show, Khe.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you, Tam.
So funny enough, you actually read Asian Efficiency a long time ago, and you were a reader before you even started your own thing. But I'm curious to hear about your story that led up to that, because you have a fascinating story where you come from immigrant parents, moved to the States, ended up working at Wall Street, graduated from Yale. Like, you have an impressive resume, but something happened where you said, you know what, I'm going to quit Wall Street altogether. I'm curious to hear what happened.
Yes. Yeah. First shout you. I think Asian Efficiency was the first productivity blog that I ever read in my life. So it is like one of these it's a key part of the origin story. So it's really beautiful to have this come full circle. To answer your question about Wall Street, like you said, I'm the child of first generation immigrants. I grew up Cambodian immigrants, grew up in New York City, and my parents had a simple plan for me. They wanted me to be happy. And for me to be happy, the plan was to give me love, shelter, food, lots of delicious Asian food, send me to support my education, and then put me on the path to get a good job. And I was a good kid. I'm the eldest. I behave. I do what people tell me to do. I follow rules. And like you said, I studied hard in high school, went to Yale, majored in computer science, got recruited for Wall Street in 2001, and had a 14-year career on Wall Street, where the chunk of it was at a large asset management firm called BlackRock, where I was one of the youngest managing directors at 31 in the company and managed a research team in their hedge fund business. So that's like the backdrop of my career. And I would say that I had, your listeners, and you may know this feeling, I call it the pebble in the shoe, where when you're walking and there's like a little twig or a rock in your foot, in your shoe, and it's annoying that you notice it, but it's not annoying enough that you stop walking, find a bench, take your shoe off, remove your sock, take the thing out, put it back on, and keep walking again, right? And so I had this pebble in my shoe while I was on Wall Street, and it started to get annoying. And I started to ask myself, like, look, I had an incredible job. My best year, I made over 7 figures in salary and bonus, in wages. And I could have just sat there and collected that check for the rest of my life. And it was actually not even that stressful. 60 hours a week is a lot, but as an entrepreneur, I probably work like 45. So it's not like crazy hours. But I asked myself, like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And I looked at people who were 10 years, 15 years older than me, and they had the nice house in the suburbs and 2 X5s and a weekend lake house, but it just wasn't what I wanted. It was a very kind of, in my mind, checked out life, going through the motions, no intellectual challenge on a regular basis, doing things for money. I was 35 years old when I quit, and I said, there's got to be something more exciting, more fulfilling, more aligned with the life that I want to live out there. I'm 35. I hope to live to be 75, 80, 100, right? I'm not going to check out for the next 50 years just because of a good paycheck.
So what I am curious about, as I was digging into your story, what were some key factors that led you to become one of the youngest managing directors at BlackRock? Were you always this productive? Were you just super driven? Like, obviously you're a smart guy because you went to Yale, but like, what else was there? Because there's a lot of smart people working on Wall Street.
Whew, good. That's a great. I haven't been asked that question in a long time, if not ever. Your blog, and I'm not blowing smoke up your behind. But I would say this, that there were a few things throughout my career, and this extends as an entrepreneurship, I can see the way the system's organized, like Wall Street being a system, and I have been able to see them as games. And I can see what gets rewarded. How do you get the fastest path to that reward? And how do you do it in a way, that's why we could talk about my company, but how do you do it in a way that is like stylish and graceful and that rallies people around you? So a few principles that I always had. I'm extremely hardworking, but that's table stakes. In any competitive industry, like being hardworking is table stakes. The second is always finding leverage through systems. And so finding different tools, different techniques, different ways of doing things. And I can give very specific examples. So that'll be another. And the third is genuine care, genuine care for the craft, whether it was like being the best research analyst, being the best manager with my direct reports, being the kindest, most helpful person in the industry peer groups, being a good public speaker. Those were all parts of my craft that I was always committed and still to this day committed to perfecting. And so those were some of the elements. But a funny story that your readers will appreciate, your listeners will appreciate, is that to make it very pragmatic, everyone on my team, I taught them GTD. And that's David Allen's Getting Things Done. So I don't think I need to explain that to this group, but I taught everyone on my team GTD, and then I coached them on how to use it in their job. Then I recommended that they all buy OmniFocus, and I would try to get the company to reimburse them so that they could practice, incorporate the weekly reviews and the perspectives and all of that stuff. I'm sure you know this and your listeners know this, but if you do, that's not that hard. But it's not, you have to go find it and build it. If you do that, you are 30% more productive than the next person, just by virtue of doing that. And so if you start with this table stakes of high work ethic, you make yourself 30% better, and you do that consistently every single day, the separation the compounding becomes gargantuan, exponential. And so I was always looking for those little ways that you could just have a little bit, be like a tiny bit better. And again, it wasn't necessarily a competition against others, but I just wanted to challenge myself to be a tiny bit better. And once I got that a little bit better, then maintain that and compound that over I'm turning 43 tomorrow, so many decades.
And it also sounds like you acquired a lot of different skills along the way that maybe others didn't pick up, like being able to learn how to use GTD, how to do public speaking and other things.
Yeah, I was definitely, again, I think you start to see when you look at it as a game, it's, wait a minute, if I'm a good manager and people want to work for me and they are loyal to me, as a two-way street, not unbound, unquestioned loyalty, like loyalty because I'm loyal to you. I'm like, that is the greatest form of leverage possible, right? If you have an average team in American business, I think 7 people. If you have 7 loyal people who will fight for you and fight for the vision that you have for and by the way, they're all 30% more productive than the next person because they know GTD. Think about the compounding effect of that. And you're together with them for 5 years, 7 years. So I read every book on management. I practiced my one-on-ones like extremely religiously. I would mentor them in their career. I still talk to my old direct reports. I've been out of the industry for 7.5 years. And they have a saying, WWKD, what would K do? And so that is the investment that I made in them that then compounded in us, and that is still compounding to these days. Some of them run their own giant businesses now. This was like 20 years ago that some of us met.
Besides GTD, were there any other books, resources that you found immensely valuable?
Yeah. So one of them that really espouses the way I approach relationship building is Adam Grant's philosophy of give and take. And that is a philosophy, you could call it networking. I don't like that word. I call it authentic relationship building, but it basically starts from a place of love and care. And so if we're just meeting and my number one focus is how can I support your dreams in life? If there's something I can do to advance your career, advance your personal life, advance your hobbies, grow your skills, if there's something I can do, whether it's little or small, it's my duty to do it for you. And so that would be an example of a philosophy. People always thought I was like this four-headed monster on Wall Street because it's a very cutthroat, like everyone's in it for themselves. Like you've probably seen the TV shows and all that's like billions and things like that. I was the opposite. I just walked around being like, how can I be helpful to you today? And they're like, what do you want from me? I'm like, no, I really don't want anything from you. I want to just see you thrive. And you just do that for 15 years, like few things happen and you live it, right? You can't just say it, you have to live it. You do that for 15 years, people want to be around you. People want to see you win. People want to help you. People will make exceptions to support you in different ways. And so it's a simple concept. It's a very long game concept, right? You don't quote unquote see the benefits of that for like many years. So if you're playing a short-term game, you'll never see the benefits, so you won't do it. You'll just be like, what can I get out of Tim in the next 3 days that benefits me? And if you can't get anything, you move on to the next person. So that would be another example. There was a book called Multipliers. My philosophy is around personal leverage. So it's funny that the first management book I ever read was called Multipliers. And it's all about how like being a great manager can scale the impact of your team. So that was an important book. There was an interesting book, I think as I got older, called The Soul of Money, which helped me rethink my relationship with money. And that's actually one of the things that helped me leave BlackRock. I make way less money now than I made like when I was 29 years old, and I'm 43. But I'm like, yeah, I'm a bazillion times happier and my life is so much richer. I'm a better parent and everything like that. But that book, The Soul of Money, helped me recalibrate my relationship with money. I could go on and on, meditation and so on. There's just so many different filaments.
No, I love that because with such a rich history and story that you have, there's so many resources that people want. And typically something I realized I forgot to do with us here is I always ask our guests some of their favorite resources to kick off the show. And I didn't do that this time. So I was like, this is perfect. This is even better than the top 3 things I would normally ask somebody. One final question I have on this part of your life is you're at a time in a position like at age 31, I think you mentioned, where you were the manager and you probably had a lot of people working under you that were older than you. And I know there's a lot of people who are listening to this or in that situation or about to be in that situation. How would you advise that type of person if they're in that position?
Oh, that's a really delicate and important question, and I'm glad you asked that, Tam. So the first thing I would say is a starting point is my philosophy for business relationships is you always start with the human first, right? I always tell, even in our current company, I say we are humans before we are employees. So I will always care for you as a human before I care for you as an employer. So that would be the first one. And you could say, people are probably listening to be like, duh, that's obvious. But think about how many times you've been in the situation when someone's put your career in front of what's best for you or your family. It happens all the time. And so that would be the first thing. It's like it always starts with genuine care. The second is to acknowledge the elephant in the room and be like, look, I know that might feel awkward. I was like 15 years younger than some of my direct reports. I know it might be awkward that you've got this young guy coming in, and I want to acknowledge that, right? I want to acknowledge that and say that, look, me being here is not a reflection of who you are, right? It's just the situation of the company. Other people made this decision, right? You acknowledge it, but you're also like, look, I didn't ask to do this. This is the situation. So that would be the other thing. And then the third thing, this is what really, I call it the with me approach. And it's what's in it for me. Human beings are motivated by incentives. And so if I can go to a direct report and say, if you get on board with this, my number one focus is to get you to thrive in your career. And whether that's get promoted, make more money, whatever. And I want you to trust me. That is why I'm, if you give me that vote of confidence, I will use every fiber in my body to get you the outcome that you desire. Now that's a two-way street. You got to deliver, and then I need to go elevate you. And that's what leadership is. It's elevating people and saying, look, and to some extent it was easier because like I had the thing, right? Like I got the title, I got the title, the fancy title. Like there was actually no other title to get. And so it made it even easier to be like, now I want all of you to be this title, right? And that leads to some hard decisions. Sometimes people are like, is this the right job for me? I would tell people very candidly, like this, maybe this isn't the right role for you. Maybe this isn't the right company for you. This pissed a lot of people off. But again, human before employee. I'm going to care about you before as a human first, and then as an employer second.
I love that. Yeah, it's a very unique situation. And what a lot of people actually don't know is in my company, I'm actually the youngest person, and my company is older than me. So I had to address some of the things that you mentioned before as well. But it's also slightly different because I actually chose older people and I got to hire people. So that was a slight different situation. But I kind of want to shift gears here because you're teaching about productivity as well. And we had our mutual friend, Chris Sparks, who's been on the show as well, introduce us to each other. And I'm curious, what is your productivity philosophy? I've heard leverages, I heard systems, I heard games. What's your take or definition of productivity?
Yeah. Ooh, I love it. So I love the philosophical side of productivity. And so it's taken me a while to think about it, but productivity to me is in service of a greater aim. And so what is that greater aim? And what I've come to see, and again, personally, so that, indirectly, this is what we teach, is productivity is a means towards peace and serenity and calm. So I want all your listeners to think about their brains. And let's say we gently, surgically sliced open your brain, and inside your brain, there was like a body of water, right? And so what does that water look like? Is it like a stage 4 hurricane where it's thrashing and there's water swirling around up and down, left slashing over the side? Or is it like a flowing, like a whitewater rapids? Or is it just like a calm lake, like a calm, still lake? And as I've gotten older, I've realized that calmness, and again, it doesn't mean that you're not cutthroat, but like savvy business person or managing director. But all we have all the time are our thoughts. And if our thoughts are violent, not violent thoughts, but violent activity, they're thrashing, they're conflicting, they're noisy, it's like a tsunami, then productivity is in service of calming that down. And our shared mutual, David Allen, mind like water. It's no coincidence that we're trying, Mr. Allen and I'm trying to get to the place that he discovered decades before you and I. And so to me, it is finding that peace, finding that contentment, finding that deep satisfaction in your life, and being able to shut your laptop and say, I'm enough, I've done enough.
So what does then 10K work represent? Because that's something that you're known for. You talk about it on Rad Reads, which is your newsletter, and also your blog. What is 10K work?
I could describe 10K work is a method, and it's tool agnostic. And we could talk about how people use the different tools, but it's a simple prioritization metric. And so if you look at it, you might say it looks no different than the Eisenhower matrix, right? It's a 2x2 matrix where all of your tasks fall into 4 categories, right? But the axes are different. So one axis is leverage, so like high leverage, low leverage. And then the other axis is skill, low skill, high skill. And then you have these 4 quadrants. So low skill, low leverage is $10 work, which I always joke, $10 work is something you could do hungover. And then the upper quadrant, high skill, high leverage, is 10K work. So I'm sharing my story. I'm sharing my philosophy. I'm sharing my course to all of your loyal, fervent listeners. And I know that there are people, just from having known your work for so long, that's 10K work. A 45-minute phone call recording between you and I will get shared to hundreds, thousands. I have no idea what your audience is, but tons of people who will listen to this, right? Think about the scale. So I'm taking that. Why is that 10K work? It's because it's high skill, high leverage, right? It's the skill to get myself invited to the podcast, and then the skill to be persuasive and be a good storyteller while I'm on the podcast. And then the skill of having an identifiable framework that people can go Google, like 10K work, and they'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Top number one result. Think about all of that leverage in that package into this beautiful podcast format that is amplified to a bunch of people who have ears for the message. So if you do 10K work, like, what's another way? Let's just take a very simple approach, is like, my goal, like, I would like to get new customers into our course, right? As a business owner, that's important. I could go write like 50 tweets right now and be like, productivity is X, productivity is Y, OmniFocus is Z, and Notion is B. That'd be a lot of $10, $100 work, right? Lower skill, lower leverage. Or I could spend 45 minutes with you. And without knowing the size of your audience, I know it's large. Like, I bet that the day this airs, we'll have 100 new subscribers into our newsletter. So that's the leverage. And why is that important? Because if I could find those leverage spots, I don't need to do that like pointless tweeting, pointless social media stuff, right? That's like fighting for one or two people. I can condense it, leverage it, do that. And again, it gets back to, so I could free up all this time, right? I want to work as little as possible. And some people want to work as little as possible so that they can work more, like generate more money. I want to work as little as possible. Once I clear the amount of money I need to make, I want to be a dad. I have a deep spiritual practice. I surf 2.5 hours every day. I sleep 9 hours. Like, I want my leverage system to work for me so that I can have that still, serene, satisfied existence. That's my goal. But your goal, or someone listening, they might be like, I'm early in my career. My goal is to make more money. Great. Same thing stands, right? If I could condense 45 minutes of me telling my story, meeting new customers in one podcast, let's go do 50. Right? Think about the leverage there. I personally don't have the energy to do it. But if someone wanted to grow much faster than me, go ahead, go do that. And so it's a philosophy that always makes you look and be like, what's that $10 thing? Banging away, writing some stupid LinkedIn post, like hoping like one person likes it, or being strategic and tactical. Even like naming our framework, we spent years coming up with that name, trying to come up with that name. And so do you do that 10K work where it's very high leverage, high skill, long payouts, right? Going to take a while. And by the way, I couldn't just be like, hey, I want to be on your podcast. I needed the credibility of Chris, the social proof. Hey, Chris can vouch for me. Chris is a friend that I've had for years, and we've been like co-collaborators and so on. So it's a philosophy to say like all that $10 work, basically, my friend calls it optimizing a turd, is just stop doing it. And just be super selective, that high dose, high octane, high leverage activities. You got to identify what they are. You need to have the momentum that takes you into them. And then you go and strategically execute on them. And if you can do that, then you are rewarded with, if you want more profits, if you want more free time, if you want to surf more and sleep more, surf more and sleep more. That becomes your personal decision.
So how does someone apply a framework like this when they work, for example, in corporate America, and maybe they're not in a management position right now. So they're like being told what needs to be done, essentially. And their to-do list is, like I always like to say, is something that other people can expand upon all the time, anytime they want to. Is there any way they can apply that framework to get what they want and be able to identify the 10K work, even though they might not earn 10K, right?
Absolutely.
But just the idea of like high leverage, high skill.
Absolutely. And thank you for pointing that out. 10K is not about earning 10K. It's just the multiplicative effect on your impact. So I get asked this question all the time. The first thing that I would tell the person is that one has stakeholders in their business. So it's someone who's invested in the output of your work. Usually it's your boss, but not necessarily. Could be a person in the adjacent department, right? Someone in the marketing team that you work with from time to time. It could be an intern that works on your team, quote unquote, for you, right? Everyone has stakeholders. Stakeholders respond to incentives. If you can make your stakeholders around you better, that is a form of leverage, right? Because, and so I'll give you a very specific example. When I was reading your blog in the early days, and my boss didn't have a to-do list. He ran a team of 15 people. He didn't have a to-do list. It's all in his head. So I set up a shadow to-do. I basically became his assistant without telling him. I'm like, you need GTD in your life. So I basically mapped, it doesn't have to be GTD, but I just basically organized his tasks by interviewing him when we talk. I'm like, so what's on the calendar for next week? What's on the calendar for quarter end? And reverse engineering and thinking about all the dependencies of his tasks. And then every morning I would check in with him. I'd be like, hey, you know, the big presentation's coming up in a week. Have you done your draft? Hey, you know, the big presentation's in 2 days. Did you do the line edits? So he was unreceptive to, forget 10K work. He was unreceptive to a to-do list. This young, eager analyst was like, I'm just going to make you better at your job, because if you're better, chances are I'll be better off. And so I basically became his part-time assistant without telling him, made his life so much more productive. When I threatened to quit to go to another job, I can't lose you. You're like, this is before Tiago 4. You're my second brain. I became his second brain. And so there's someone in your company, there is a stakeholder who you can accelerate their efforts, and you will get caught in the upswing by making them better, making them more organized, anticipating their problems. You could view this in the category of managing up, right? Looking above you and being like, what does this person need? Because oftentimes bosses are too busy to pay attention to the details. So if you can do that on their behalf, you are scaling your boss, which by definition, you're scaling yourself because you're a part of your unit. So that'll be one thing. The second thing is a lot of 10K work is seed planting. If you are in a job and you're like, this sounds so great for entrepreneurs who control their own destiny, but I work at a Fortune 500 company where it's like very pre-programmed. Here's what I say. Look in your company and see the people that you want to be in 10 years. That's 10K work, just identifying them. Once you've identified them, write a list. What makes them so good at their craft? Some might be public speaking, others might be really good managers, some might be extremely creative, some might be like have a very unique skill, like really good at statistics or probabilities, something like that. Some might be a good writer, some might be a good networker. Come up with those lists of skills of the people that you want to be in 5-10 years. That's also 10K work, coming up with that list. Then pick 3 that resonate with you and go get good at them. Now, technically, that's a mix of 1K and 10K work, but we won't get into the semantics in this discussion. But you see what it is, right? It's having a strategy for your life, having a strategy for your business, having a strategy for your career. That's 10K work. Most people don't have that. They just show up, they work hard, they get their bonus, they get their year-end review, and rinse, repeat. Imagine like you're CEO of a company, you have a strategy for your business. You're like, in 5 years, we need to get to that thing. And to get to that place, we need to do these different things. We need to plant these seeds now. People need that for their personal lives. They need that for their kids. They need that not for their kids, but as they plan the lives of their kids, like going to college and school and things like that. They need that for their hobbies, their interests, their career pivots, right? Don't let life just happen to you. You're just constantly doing $10 and $100 work because people are serving you work and you're just doing it. Now, just because you don't own your business doesn't mean you've lost complete agency on your life and your career. You might have less agency, but if you truly have no agency in your career, you're in the wrong career. And then your 10K work becomes, how do I get into a new career?
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that example, because I think a lot of people can dismiss the idea of 10K work in a sense that the payout might take a long time before it gets there. But if it's something that really is that important, the best time to start is maybe it was yesterday, but if not yesterday, then it is today. And so just being able to look forward and say, hey, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to be at. What does it take to get there? What are the steps? What do I have to do or become to get there? And then making sure you have clarity around that, then making sure you do that.
Can I give your listeners a 10K work, like a little mini assignment right now?
Sure.
So if you're listening and you're even if you're not confused about 10K work, I want you to, so today is July, we're in July of 2022. So I want you to picture July 2027. So it's 5 years from now. And your life's gone great. Now, I want you to write, imagine you're a movie director. Just write, what does a day in your great life in 2027 look like? Tell me, where are you? Who are you with? What are you wearing? What did you eat for breakfast? Who are you meeting with? What are you working on? What's your title? Where is your office? What are the thoughts going through your mind? What does your family situation look like? Where do you live? What does your body feel? Write down all those details. Imagine you're like writing like a scene of a movie. And then sit back, put it down for 24 hours, pick it up the next day, and then ask yourself, am I in the right direction for that to happen? And then you can slowly start to deconstruct. You might have this thing where you have complete autonomy. This is a big thing that I care about, complete autonomy over my days. That might be in your 5-year plan, but you're at a company that's requiring everyone to go back to the office 100%. There is a disconnect there. I'm not telling you to quit your job, but the disconnect is probably not going away in the next 5 years. So what are you going to do about it? That's 10K work. What am I going to do about this disconnect that I value autonomy? And in my current situation, I'm going to be forced to come to the office 5 days a week. Again, this doesn't mean quit your job. It means ask yourself, if that is really part of my dream life, how will I get there? You got 5 years to figure it out.
I really love that. Thinking far ahead and then doing the thinking time essentially here to figure out what needs to be true and happen to get there. And that I would agree is 10K work. It's something that we don't do enough of. And I wish more people did it. So I'm glad you inspired everyone here today to do that. If not,
and I'll give you a little secret about my 10K work. I just sit down and think for 30 minutes every day. And I just pick a different element of my business. I do it for my personal life and my business life. And so this morning I sat down with a notebook and said, what does a cohesive marketing strategy look like for Rad Reads? 25 minutes. It's 10K work. It's not flashy. There's no dopamine. Can't post it on social. But you do that every day for 20 years, you're unstoppable. Unstoppable.
I love that. Khe, we've talked a lot about high level strategies. I want to also like talk shop and go maybe like low level strategies, meaning apps, tools, things you like, things you don't like. What does your productivity stack look like nowadays?
Yeah, I hate mobile phones. I think that my goal is to be calm in my head, and having a mobile phone is a recipe for me to get all anxious. I'm like a very much like a kind of deep work type of person, really strict boundaries on stuff. I'll tell you what's not on my phone because that's probably more telling than what's on my phone. So
Well,
on
what
my
kind of phone
phone,
do you have then?
I have the small iPhone, I think 12 maybe.
Okay, so no, not quite a flip phone yet.
No, I wouldn't get a flip. I need Uber and stuff. I wouldn't get a flip phone. I'd like to have a flip phone, but I live in LA, like I need Google Maps. So on my phone, what you will not find, you will not find email, you will not find Slack, you will not find any social media apps. And on top of that, every distraction site that I go to, which is like one of my distractions is reading the news. I have my phone set up on parental controls. So it's like you could list like blacklist sites. So I've listed the top 25 news sites in the world are listed blacklisted. And so is Twitter, Facebook. I haven't been on Facebook for years, so I don't care about that. Instagram. This is browser, mind you, like because I don't have the apps. Instagram blocked. So like when I'm really bored on my phone, like I like go read Wikipedia. Like there's nothing fun on my phone. So it's really just it's quick capture. I could read Notion pages and stuff like that. So that's my phone stack. And obviously like I have young kids, so I use it as a camera all the time. I don't use my phone for the first hour when I'm awake. So I wake up about 7 and I don't use it until I drop my kids off at school, which is like 8:15. And then I go to bed at about 9:30 and I turn my phone off completely, power down. And that really impacts I love sleeping. So that really impacts the quality of my sleep. In terms of my laptop stack, let's see. The main place where I do stuff is Notion. And it's mostly, we use Notion as a team, as a substitute for Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Asana or ClickUp project management, basically. So our whole team stack, we have a team of 6, including myself, and we run entirely in Notion. And we actually have a consulting business to run in Notion. We have very strict rules as a company on how we communicate because we value asynchronous communication and we value that calmness in our head. If I want that for people I care about, my direct reports, my team, I want that for them. That's why they want to work with us. So we have an expectation that you check Slack twice a day. So there's no chatting on Slack. Most people don't have Slack on their phones. Anyway, zero internal email. So we don't email is only to email with external providers. And all of our communication takes place in app. So you basically have communications about tasks and projects inside of. So I spend a ton of time in Notion. For my personal productivity, I don't have a ton of personal tasks. I own my business. So many of my tasks are related to my business. For my personal productivity, I still use OmniFocus. It's mostly for things like paying my rent and basically updating documents and paying bills at this point. So it's pretty lightweight. I really appreciate how fast OmniFocus still is relative to a lot of this new breed of no-code apps. I use Superhuman. I'm a big keyboard shortcut guy, Superhuman, Text Expander, but I batch my email. So I probably only check my email maybe 3 or 4 times a day. And I don't respond until the evening, between 5 and 7. And I use a lot of pen and paper. I doodle a lot. I map my day out on a piece of paper, and then I just delete it, throw it out at the end of the day. I'm sure there's a lot of quick capture folks here. We all know the quickest capture is pen and paper. And so as a quick capture junkie, I spend a lot of my time on pen and paper, and I basically wipe the slate clean at the end of the day, rewrite things on the next day, or put things into a longer term project management system if they need a little bit more organizing.
Awesome. Very insightful there. Considering you use Notion quite a bit, are there any tips and tricks that you have for Notion users? Is there any particular reason you like Notion over other things?
Yeah. So we like Notion. There's a trade-off with Notion relative to the other apps. We love Notion because you get to put task management and documentation in the same place. We also have it set up that we basically used this inbox system to move documents around the organization. So let's say like you and I worked on the same team and we had a brainstorm document or brainstorm series 7 of the podcast, right? You would create a document. So most people would do this in Google Docs. So we created in Notion. You'd create a document and you would tag me and let's say your colleague Jury, like you'd tag them in there's a person like who owns this document or who, and then you would say, here are my thoughts on this document. And then there's a slot for the date. And you might want us to respond by next Friday. So you would put July 22nd. Then as soon as you initiate that brainstorm, it shows up in my inbox. And then I'm like, okay, Pam needs this by next Friday. And then it's up to me when I do it. Like I could do it Thursday night, or some people on our team, the minute it hits their inbox, they do it right away. Other people wait until the day before it's due. And some people are like manage their time versus energy type stuff. And they're like, oh, in the afternoons, I do my documents. So so that's like this hybrid of like, it's a task, right? Please fill out this document, but it's a document because I have to write stuff in it. And so the beauty of Notion is that you don't have to, if you were to do this in Asana and Google Docs, you'd create the document in Google Docs, then you would create the task in Asana, and then you would like assign it and put due dates. And that's like fine, but there's a lot of like copy and pasting, blue links and stuff. We would rather have it all in one place. And so you just go to one place. We have an advantage because we used to teach a Notion course. So everyone on our team knows Notion really well. I think that if a team doesn't know Notion well, like you're always beholden to the least experienced Notion user, right? That kind of like lowest common denominator will slow you down a lot. And so we're lucky that our team is like very skilled in Notion. In terms of tips and tricks for Notion, this document inbox concept it's amazing. Like just the ability to like pass things around an organization it just cuts the number of like, I call them Franken-monster documents, where it's like someone sends you a Slack message to update your comments in a Google Doc. I'm like, guys, why are we doing this? This is hell. Can we just streamline it? So I think Notion, what's great with Notion is that, to use an analogy, like you're the architect of the house and you're also the builder. So you could architect, you're like, I like having my kitchen next to my living room. And so you just build your kitchen next to your living room. If you use Asana and Google Docs, you have to like, the kitchen goes where it's told to go, right? And you work around that. So we like to be the architects and then the builders of the house ourselves, because we can actually go out and build it. So that document exchange system is like super powerful. You could also layer all your company things like objectives and key results, goal setting, CRM. It can all live in the same place. So like any task that's related to TAM, whether it's a note, a task, a document, conversation, they're all linked to you in one place. Versus, go find the meeting note with Tam in Google Docs and then go find all of Tam's tasks in Asana. There's just a lot of switching there. Other little things that I like about Notion would be the way that you can create a table that has different tabs, and each tab can link to a different database. So it's almost like creating like an app for yourself. So that you could create a little table. And on one thing, you could have all my tasks. On another tab, you could have all my documents. On another tab, you could have all my meetings. On another tab, you could have all my contacts. These are 4 different databases, all in one tab window, all with the filters that suit you and only you. That's what I love, how little like screen real estate you could use on something that in theory could access like thousands and thousands of pieces of data.
Awesome. Thank you, Kai. I really enjoyed this episode here today. And this was so much fun. I learned so much about your story and all the ways you like live productivity. I think that's a apt way of describing you. So if people want to find out more about you, Rad Reads, your course, like anything that you're up to, where should people go?
Great question. And thank you. Like I said, it's so fun to watch this kind of come full circle. Maybe 15 years after I started reading your blog, to be a guest and to meet you is just like a true delight. Main place, radreads.co. Sign up for the newsletter. We write a lot. We have all of these amazing email trainings. I write a personal essay on like philosophical productivity every week for almost like 300 weeks now. So it's always there to make you think. Like I ask like these random questions, like, would you read a productivity book if you had a year to live? And so like I ask these questions that really, to me, productivity is just the gateway to much bigger questions about who you are, what your dreams are, and how you're going to get there. And productivity is one way of accessing that conversation. And to me, that's what I love about it. So that would be the place. On social media, the most active place I am on is Twitter. Actually, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn now as well. And then one day I'll get a TikTok, but I don't have one of those yet.
Awesome. We'll make sure to link to all of these resources in the show notes. Khe, thanks again for being on here today and sharing all your wisdom.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.